going to tie a fly I'm calling the Swiffer, and I tie this in a dry fly, a nymph, and I'm going to do the wet fly version here. So I've got a size 12 wet fly hook in the vise, and I'm going to use an 8/0 olive thread. So I'll just get that started here on the hook shank and cut the excess. The tail that I'm going to tie in is just a saddle hackle, and this is an olive colored, and it's got some black markings in it as well. I'm going to take off maybe a half a dozen fibers for the tail, measure it out to be about a hook shank in length, and then I'll just tie that back to where the barb in the hook would be. Trim off the excess, and now I can tie in my back, and I'm going to use a pearl tinsel. I'm going to tie this right on top. Make sure that it's good and centered by the time you get back to the tail so that it folds over. And now I can tie in my rib that I'm going to use, and for this it's an ostrich herl, and this is in a gray or dun color. So I'll tie that in, and now I can wrap in my body, and for that I'm going to use a floss, and this is kind of a light green or olive floss. It's a 4-strand, and again, when I'm using floss of multiple strands, if you wet them, they become a little bit more agreeable to work with. So I've got 2 strands here. I've wet them so that they join up, and now I'll just wrap them into place. And I don't really want to taper in the pattern, but I do want it to be kind of even all the way through. So now I can start to bring my floss and wrap it on the body, and so these are nice just side by side wraps. And I'll bring that up to where I want the thorax to start and tie it off. And trim the excess. And now I can bring my tinsel on top and tie it in and trim the excess. And now before I wrap my ostrich, what I want to do is I'm going to take just a very fine amount of Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails, and the reason I do this is because I don't want that peacock, or that ostrich rather, can be brittle, and I don't want the first fish I take to break it off, and so I'll just put a coat of this on, again very lightly. I'm just taking off some of the excess now. And it gives it kind of a neat effect with that flash, and it doesn't affect kind of the top fibers that I tie in. So it's gonna stick to the bottom ones, but those that are on top are going to stay pliable with a lot of movement. So now I'm just wrapping the ostrich all the way up to the top, and when I get to the thorax, then I'll tie it off. And trim that. Now I'll just bring my thread back a little bit, and I can tie in my thorax, and I'm going to use a peacock herl now for this. So I'll take a section of peacock off, and I'll tie this into the side. And just leave a little bit of room for the wet fly hackle. and tie it off. And trim the excess. Now I'm just going to advance my thread or push my thread back just to give me enough room for my wet fly. And for that I'm going to use a soft hackle hen, which is my typical material for my wet fly. So I'll select a piece and I'll peel back the bottom portion of it here, just cleaning that up a bit, and then I'll pull everything back. I'm going to tie this in by that tip. And all my thread wraps, when I tie it in, are going to be back and away from the eye to give myself plenty of room. I'll trim that. And now I'll just hold it by the stem. I'm going to wet this back so they lay on top of one another. And as I wrap, I'll help them that way as well. And then I can tie it off, and I'll put the stem and pull everything back and tie that in as well. And that should be easy enough to break off. And now I can just build out my thread head here. And a whip finish. And trim the excess thread. And now I'll just come back with a drop of head cement. And it's done. And that's, I think, it's a cool little pattern. You can see that shine on the flashback. Got a neat little rib to it. I'm calling that fly the Swiffer.